Thank you so much for joining us with On the Line with AgriLife, hosted by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. On the Line with AgriLife is designed to be a short teleconference or online program that allows you to get the most up-to-date and relevant information on various topics in the agriculture industry from AgriLife specialists and county agents. The On the Line with AgriLife program is hosted the third Tuesday of every month at 8:30, or the recorded version is posted for the previous month for you to view at your convenience. If you need a reminder about the scheduled On the Line with AgriLife sessions, please utilize our free text message reminder system. To sign up, you're going to text 81010 with the message @ OTLWA. We'll not be blowing up your phone, but we'll send you reminder links to join, as well as information about how to take the survey and enter win some of our giveaways. For completing the survey today at the conclusion of our program, you will be entered to win a voucher for the Texas Sheep and Goat Expo coming up in August of 2020. Due to COVID-19, if the 2020 Sheep and Goat Expo has been canceled, the committee will graciously roll over your voucher for the 2021 program. So make sure you go to our website to complete that survey. If you aren't already receiving your Connecting West Texas Farmers and Ranchers newsletter, please sign up to receive yours today. You can do that online. A new and upcoming program that we're excited to announce is our West Texas Farmer and Rancher Conference, July 31st and August 1st in Monahans, Texas at the Wards County Event Center. And more information about the West Texas Farmer and Ranchers Conference will be on our website, and we can't wait to share that with you. For our first On the Line with AgriLife program, we are excited to welcome Dr. Reid Redden, Associate Professor and Texas A&M AgriLife Sheep and Goat Specialist, to provide us an update and provide some new research about controlling internal parasites in our sheep and goats. Dr. Reid?
Thank you for inviting me to participate in this On the Line with AgriLife. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be the first one to kick it off. Today, I've been asked to talk about internal parasites and ways to control them, specifically with dewormers. But before we jump right into that, I wanted to first start off with that we must be talking about the same parasite, and you got to know which parasites are the problematic ones and the ones that you're dealing with. They're not all the same. So in sheep and goats, the most problematic are the roundworms. In particular, the warm season parasite called the barber's pole worm, or its scientific name is Haemonchus contortus. There's another roundworm, the brown stomach worm. It's a cool season worm. It does not feed on blood. It does not cause the rapid rate of animal health issues and death that the barber pole does. And the barber pole worm is generally a parasite that affects sheep and goats when it warms up. So generally around April is when it really starts going, and will continue as long as it's wet and raining through the warm season. One of the things that people misdiagnose often is tapeworms. So it's common to look in the feces of sheep and goats and see a big white worm that's moving around. When people see that, they often get concerned that their sheep and goats have parasites, and they want to go pick up a dewormer at the local feed store and get to drenching the animals. Now, they may have roundworms, but the tapeworms really don't cause any animal health issues to speak of. And so that shouldn't be your warning sign for internal parasites, such as the roundworm, particularly the barber pole worm. Another common parasite in sheep and goats is coccidia or coccidiosis, which is a protozoa. It causes bloody diarrhea. It's more of a problem in young animals, freshly weaned, that are stressed and haven't developed an immune system to it, but we won't cover that today. So next slide, please. All right, so if the tapeworms and or diarrhea are not the main symptoms that we're looking for, what are the main symptoms of the barber pole worm, since it's the most damaging? Generally, what you're going to see is pale eyes and gums are the first signs that those animals are becoming anemic, because that little worm is feeding on blood within the digestive tract, specifically the abomasum. As that disease progresses further, you're going to see the classical bottle jaw, where they get fluid underneath the jaw. These animals will be weak and generally short of breath. And if left untreated and their immune system can't fight it off long term, they will generally succumb to the disease. This barber pole is the most damaging sheep and goat disease, albeit a parasite worldwide, and so it affects animals all over the globe. I think it's really important to understand the life cycle of Hymonchus contortus. And what I've found is the best way to learn that is a figure off wormboss.com.au. They've got go to that website. It's out of Australia, and it has a fantastic life cycle that really kind of gives you a visual and written description of that life cycle and how to manage kind of around that. While I'm on websites, another great website resource that's got really good information is worm, the letter X, and .info. So I go to these websites routinely to stay up to date on things and remind myself of what's going on. And so I'd encourage you to do the same. But do recognize when you go on the internet or you're in social media groups and pages, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So be cognizant of what you're looking at. And if you ever have questions, I encourage you to talk to your agents and get their input on those different places. And they can always reach out to me and get my input on it as well. Next slide, please. Okay. So when we're treating animals, which again, I think is the third step in a treatment plan, we really need to start thinking about trying to prevent it ahead of time. We're not going to get into those prevention management plans too much, but when animals are wormy and they need to be treated for their overall well-being, we have three major classes of dewormers. So there's a lot of different products on the shelf. I shouldn't say a lot. There's a few products on the shelf, but there's three different classes. When I say classes, they work differently. So the first, and the one that's probably been around quite a long time, is the white dewormers or the benzimidazole. Okay, those white dewormers include Safeguard and Valbazen. So Safeguard is a very safe product to use, but it's not extremely potent. It's a wide-ranging dewormer, so it covers a lot of different classes. But when we look at Hymonchus, which develops resistance faster than any of the other parasites, Safeguard, there's a lot of Hymonchus resistant worms that resistant towards Safeguard. Valbazen is a similar class. It's the kind of first cousin to Safeguard, but it's a more potent option. Generally, there's less resistance out there. The problem with Valbazen is it can have some detrimental effects if given during early pregnancy, specifically the first trimester. So we want to avoid using that drug during the first trimester. The second class, in no particular order, is any product that has the active ingredient levamisole. So levamisole, it's generally clear once you mix it with water. You're generally getting a powder form, and then you're going to mix it yourself. And it's generally cheaper that way than having someone, transport and distribute water that's just got a packet of this stuff mixed up in it. These products are under the trade name Prohibit or Levamed. The old trade name was Tramadol. And so this product is pretty specific. It's not as wide ranging as the white dewormers, but it is fairly effective against Hymonchus. But it's probably the most toxic to the animals themselves. So if you get to where you're using it 3 times the recommended dose or higher, we can run into instances where a select number of animals may go into shock and die from over-treatment. Whereas Safeguard, you could probably give 5 times the recommended dose and not have any major animal welfare issues. This Prohibit is, like I said before, is fairly specific. The third class would be the macrocyclic lactones. Sorry for the big words, but I generally call them the mectins. So ivermectin, Cydectin, Dectomax, which is not approved for sheep and goats, but they're all in that same major class. These products have been around a few decades now. They tend to still be fairly effective at most of our parasites, unless you've overused them for a period of time and have developed resistance. So those are the 3 major classes that are out there. Just so that you're aware, and you might make this mention to your legislators and others that influence policy is there's two new active ingredients used worldwide. One of them is monopantel, and it's sold under the trade name Zolvix. There's actually been some cases where people have had this imported into the U.S. illegally and used it. It's a completely different class, so it will be very effective if never used before on your animals or animals that you've purchased from other people that have used it. And there's a fifth active ingredient called Dirquintel. This is, again, a new class, will be highly effective if we ever get the option to use it. But what's interesting about this class is they never released it by itself. They released it under the name StarTech, and when Dirquintel was released originally, they put it with an abamectin. So the class of the it's in the same class as, say, Sidectin. And so when they released that, they released it as a combination. Next slide, please. And the reason that they released it as a combination is science has now proven to us that if we use multiple active ingredients at the same time, we can drastically increase the efficacy of our drenches. And so some of the leading parasitologists in the world are all now making strong recommendations that when you need to treat animals, that you should be using at least two active ingredients at the same time. So that does not indicate that you need to mix the drenches. You should be giving them a full dose of two separate products separately. If you feel like you have to mix them, then you need to work that out with your veterinarian and someone who has some pharmacology knowledge to know how those products are going to mix together. When we start using multiple active ingredients products, we really need to start thinking about not overusing them. Because if we overuse them, there will be a time when we develop internal parasites that are resistant to all of the classes that we're using. And so you don't want to use them too much. You want to use them sparingly, and think about refugia, meaning that you're leaving some animals untreated to harbor parasites that will still be susceptible to these into the future. Next slide, please. For y'all that are calling in, I apologize for this. There's just a little table here. I'm sure that whatever county you're in, if you'd like to look at this table, the agent can get it to you. But it just shows you the methods, or really the mathematical equations that proves why using products in combination increases the efficacy. We want to get to 99% or better efficacy, and we need to start using these products in combination before they get too far down the road. If we're using products that are only 40 to 50% effective, even when we go to three-way active ingredients, our efficacy rate is going to be below the 99% that we need. So even though you may be using a product and it seems to be working pretty good on your sheep and goats, you really ought to know how effective it is, or you need to start looking into multiple active ingredient treatments. There's a lot of alternative products that are being promoted out there, whether that's diatomaceous earth or garlic or condensed tannin forages. Some of them have been proven to work, and one of those, which I generally recommend to people to really think about using, is copper oxide wire particle boluses. These boluses are very specific about killing Haemonchus contortus or any roundworm that lives in the abomasum. It's really copper wire cut up into small pieces. Treatment of copper, there's my timer, my 10 minutes is up, so I'll try to wrap this up quickly. But copper's not new. Copper sulfate has been given to sheep in the past, but the one advantage is the copper oxide is it's not that absorbed by the animals themselves, so we can keep a less amount of copper being absorbed into their system and reduce the chance of copper toxicity, which some sheep breeds tend to be a bit more specific to. But the main thing with copper oxide is if you'll include it with a dewormer or multiple class dewormer treatment, we really can get our efficacy rates back to 99%. We've done these things, these little demo projects here at the research center with valbazin, prohibit, sidectin. Every time we add a copper oxide particle in with a a traditional anthelmintic chemical treatment, it takes our efficacy rate back above 98, 99%. So they really, really work. You do have to really be careful about not overdoing it. It's probably only a once a year treatment, and we can get into the details of that later. There's a few different suppliers, and I'm sure if you have follow-up questions on this, your agents can get you a contact info to those places, and if they don't have it, I can do that as well. Next slide. So to kind of wrap up this managing internal parasites with different treatments, the first thing is make sure you know you need to be treating the animals and you know what parasite you're working with. Do think about your flock and herd management plan, because a proper grazing plan and keeping the animals in the right body condition can reduce your parasite infections by threefold, and then you don't need to drench as much. When you do drench, you need to be using some really smart techniques to get as best a kill rate as you can. And when you're using alternative products, be really sure that there's scientific evidence to show that they're working. If not, you're kind of wasting time and money, and you're just not real sure that it's going to give you the desired result. So sorry I went over a few minutes. It's a big subject for only 10 minutes, but hopefully I didn't put us too far behind. Emily or whomever else is going to kind of moderate questions, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Redden. I think that was great information. Again, for those of you who are using a computer, if you'll open up the chat, you're free to type in questions there, and we'll get those to Dr. Redden. I'd ask Emily or Jessica if they want to unmute some of the others that are on the phone. If you have a question, you can certainly chime in here. And so we've got a few minutes here to allow for a question answer period for any questions anybody has. All right, Dr. Redden.
I have unmuted anyone who's got a phone. Oh, I've unmuted your phones. Well, maybe I'm not going to.
We've got a goat trying to submit a question.
Yes.
So we have one from the chat here, Dr. Redden, and it says, can you give out any dosage rates, cc's, to give each animal?
Okay, technically you're supposed to follow the label instructions. So all of the dewormers will have a label for recommended dosage rate. But my go-to place is wormx.info. There's some parasitologists that have done a lot of work at looking at the proper dosage rate to get the most effective kill for sheep and goats by weight class and by the different drugs. And so that's my go-to place is wormx.info. And then they've got a thing on dewormers and recommended dose rates. And they aren't always the same as the label. They're generally higher. In goats, we generally 2x, give twice the dosage rate for most of our dewormers if it doesn't have goats on the label, if it's just got sheep. And so that's the go-to place. If they have specific products, we can kind of talk about them. And again, if you're double dosing or really increasing your dose rate from the label, be really careful with prohibit, because for instance, if you have 80-pound lambs and you're double dosing them, and then you get a 50-pound lamb that comes in and you give them the same one, now you're at 3.5, 4 times the recommended dose per unit body weight. And if that lamb was pretty anemic from parasites before, we might lose them.
All right. Another question that was asked was, are they still given orally, or is there anything that's pour on?
Yeah, I'm a pretty strong proponent of only oral treatments. There are injectables out there, but none of them are labeled for sheep and goats. And so if you were to ever have a USDA inspection on carcasses and they found a site that they could trace back to an injectable one, you wouldn't want to be the person that received that call. Plus, there's some evidence that the injectables are less effective than their oral counterparts of the same chemical class. So if it's less effective, that means resistance comes on faster. And so I still suggest to give everything orally. There are the pour-on versions where you would put them down their back. They're generally made for cattle, and some people use those pour-ons orally because they're a bit cheaper. It's pretty irritating to the throat, and so I'd recommend to try and find the oral version of that product if you could. There is some scientific evidence that using the pour-ons as a pour-on on sheep and goats is just as effective as the oral counterpart to it. But unfortunately, that's not on the label. So you're using that a bit off label, and I'd highly recommend you talk with your veterinarian about doing that. Some of those pour-on strategies may also help with your external parasites. So again, work with your veterinarian to work that out. But most of the time, I'm going to say we need to stick with the orals.
All right. Emily, do we want to try and open it up to those on the phone for just a minute to see if anybody wants to chime in with a question?
Absolutely. So I think that those of you who are on your phone should be able to unmute your phone and speak in. If you're not, and you have a question, let's give that a try. I guess there's no way for me to know, except for there. I thought I know. Oh, don't know anyone on the phone anymore. Let's see. Any of you on the phone have a question? I'm going to unmute y'all if there's anybody who has a question on our dial-in option. Reid, I do have a question while we've got them unmuted for a second.
Sure.
About how long is there any hope of those 2 new active ingredients being approved, and when might that be done?
I mean, they told us that Zolvix was going to be released any day now, and that was in 2003. So I'm not holding my breath anymore. The American sheep industry and Texas sheep and goat raisers has put this as a priority in some of the communications that they've had with legislators to either relax the rules or put money into the farm bill to approve minor species use products. But I can't give you any relative likelihood or timeline when those will be available.
So, well, any other questions that we've got coming through?
Drench.
Say that one more time for us. Sir, can
Emily,
you
how do you determine the roundworms or tapeworms that your sheep have? How do you find out?
Thank you, Mr. Quaglia. Did you hear that, Mr. Redden?
Yes, I did. So, tapeworms, you can see them in the feces. I mean, they're visual to the eye. Roundworms, you cannot see them in the feces. You have to take a sample to your veterinarian and have them do a diagnostic check. They'll float the fecal matter, and under a microscope, they'll look for the eggs. And so that's the best way to know if it's roundworms, or you could look for the kind of signs and symptoms. Doing the FAMACHA eye check is the way to determine if they're anemic or not. Animals that start to show signs of anemia is, they're fairly infected at that point. It's better to diagnose it ahead of time.
What would be the product to use?
Mr. Quaglia, one more time.
Safeguard would be the product to use.
It kind of depends on what products you've used in the past. I would generally recommend, if you have animals that you have a diagnostic test that they have a high load of parasites or they're showing signs and symptoms, to use at least 2 products that you can get access to at your local feed store and get a full dose of each product.
I have darker sheep, and the ewes have just lambed. Is there any problem giving it a treatment because they're on green feed?
No issues with the ewes. The only issue with drenching ewes with lambs at their side is if you treat the ewes then they're going to pass that chemical through the milk to the lamb at a non-lethal dose. So if those lambs are, say, 45 to 60 days old and they're eating grass and they're starting to take on parasites, you can get some resistance development in the lambs because you treated the ewes but didn't treat the lambs.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you everybody so much. We are running out of time for questions. If you have questions for Reid, we will please, or have questions about controlling internal sheep and goat parasites, please let us know. Reid, as promised, we are going to start a new fun thing on the line with AgriLife and give you the opportunity to give a free 30-second commercial. These are unpaid advertisements for something maybe that you just, a place you've eaten recently that you'd like to share with our participants, or a new product that you've bought that you like, free 30-second commercial, or maybe an upcoming program that you'll be speaking at. So quick 30 seconds and then we'll wrap her up for today.
Okay, 30 seconds. I would say one thing is follow us on our social media page, primarily our Facebook page. We've got a Texas A&M AgriLife Sheep and Goat Extension Facebook page and are coming up on 10,000 followers. So we need a few more people to hit the 10,000 mark. So if you're on social media, do that. Plugging a product. A friend of mine has some really nice wool socks out of South Dakota. It's called Fish Hook Sock Company. So I highly recommend them.
All right, this is Madeline Sane in Presidio County. Thank you all so much for joining our first On the Line with AgriLife program today. Next month's On the Line with AgriLife will be on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. The topic is Integrated Pest Management for Your Garden with Jeanette Castanon. She is the Horticulture Extension Agent in Midland County. We will be covering the basic IPM for insects and the appropriate pesticides to use to combat the pests in your garden. Also, just a side note, please do not forget to take the survey after the program. Simply go to the website provided and complete the survey. This survey will allow you to enter a drawing to win free access to the Texas Sheep and Goat Expo. That's August 14th and 15th in San Angelo, Texas. Also, the survey link will be active until next month's program, which is Tuesday, May 19th.
Thank y'all, everybody. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you back in May for the next On the Line with AgriLife.